Okay, yesterday we found slope on a graph by counting the rise over the run. And we counted that on a Cartesian graph. Now, if you don't know how to count rise over run, go back to yesterday's video. We're going to move on today. You can find slope 3 different ways. You can count on a graph, and we did that yesterday. You can use the slope formula, and that's when we're given 2 points. And the third way is from an equation. Or function. Okay, these are the 3 ways that we can find slope. And what they gave you, the information that they gave you, will depend on how you find the slope, how you decide to find it. Now, yesterday, we did this one in yesterday's video. Today, we're going to use the slope formula. Is it hard to see the purple?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to, which one do you want me to read to you?
Number 3.
Number 3 says from an equation. And in parentheses, it says or function. Because you're going to find out that the equations and the functions are just about the same thing. All right? From an equation, number 3 says from an equation, in parentheses, or function. Okay?
And in the 2, it says something 2 points.
Given. Given 2 points. The slope formula, given 2 points. That means they're going to give us 2 points and we're going to use a formula. Okay? I'll try to use a different color. Orange is good. Okay. So what we're going to work on right now is finding the slope, finding slope using a formula. That means that they're going to give us 2 points. Okay, let's say that the instructions say, find the slope of the line. Find the slope of the line is probably what it will say, something like this. Find the slope of the line. This is the kind of instructions given these points or something like that. Okay, find the slope of the line given these 2 points. And then they'll give you 2 locations that are on the coordinate plane. So let's say -1, 3, and 4, 2. Okay, this is an example that they will give you. Now, the slope formula, and I'm pretty sure it's on your formula chart. Formula chart? Pretty sure it's
I
on.
put it on the
Yes, it is. Right under algebra,
Okay.
right here, it says slope of the line. Okay? Remember that M is what they use to indicate slope. And so your formula now is going to be M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, this is the formula to find the slope of a line if the only thing that you're given is 2 points. Now, that's cool, and it looks pretty easy, but where do all these letters come from? So now we're going to look at our 2 points. The first, we found out that the first coordinate in this point is always your x coordinate, and the second one is always your y. So in this one, it's also, the first one is the x coordinate, and the second one is the y. All right? But if we have 2 points, that means we have 2 x's and 2 y's, and how are we going to tell the difference? So we simply number them so we can tell the difference. These are going to be 0.1. Notice that the ones are subscripts, they're not exponents. So they're just numbering. The 1 doesn't mean anything except to avoid confusion. We're going to call this one the 2, and again, these are subscripts, they're not exponents. Don't use them as exponents. All right, now that we know what the values of x1, x2, y1, y2, now that we know what that is, all we have to do is just like we've had all the other equations, the formulas, all we have to do is plug it in to the formula. I'll be writing backwards here so you can see. So I write the formula first, like I've always encouraged you to do, and then underneath, I'm going to copy. And I'm just going to put in the values of my formula. So I'm going to go find y2. It's 2, so I'm going to put a 2 in that place, minus y1. I'm going to go find y1, which is a 3. And then over, which means divide. This is a fraction. Remember that slope is a fraction, right? Okay, so it says to find x2 now, and that's 4. Then I have to put a minus because it's in the equation. And then x1, which is a -1. Now be careful here. The minus is because it's in our formula. But then the -1 has to be written also. So we're going to have 2 negatives there. Is everybody okay with that? All right. And we know that 2 negatives together, we'll go ahead and circle that up and make it a plus. So now the slope of the line containing these 2 points is going to be 2 minus 3 is a -1. 4 plus 1 is 5. Now, we talked about yesterday also that this is the slope. This is definitely the slope. But we're not worried so much about where the negative is in the answer. On a fraction, the negative could be on the top, or it could move to the bottom, or it could actually just be put out in front. And every one of these fractions is exactly the same, no matter where the negative is, as long as it's only one negative. 2 negatives cancel each other out and make a positive, right? But if there's one negative, it's pretty independent, and it can go anywhere it wants to go. Top, bottom, middle, it means the same thing. Is everybody good with that? Okay. So the formula's not all that bad, right? You just remember that your values are xy, xy, okay? And then you'll have to number those so you can tell the difference. Now, if you chose, and this, I hope this doesn't confuse you. If you chose to make these the 1 and the 1, and make this the 2 and the 2, bless you.
Oh my goodness.
This made the 2 and the 2, your answer would come out correct.
Somebody's on there.
It's just doing weird stuff, isn't it?
Wait.
Oh, okay,
Is
I
the
know.
IT working
This is
on
the
it?
IT guy, and he can actually get in and work remotely on our computers.
It's like, you scared me, somebody's standing next to me. I was like,
Yeah, it's a little bit Halloween-y, isn't it?
Right.
Weenie. Okay. All right, so, okay, since this is pretty self-explanatory, I want to show you something. You could, if you wanted, you could plot these points and count the slope. Let's do it. Let's say you were just having a little bit of trouble with the formula. I can't imagine, but you might be having trouble with it. So what you do is just take your graph paper, and then you can plot these points on a coordinate graph. So let's go -1, 3. Here's the origin, -1, 1, 2, 3. So there's a point there. And then 4, 2. And there's a point right there. Okay? Let's go ahead and draw the line so you can see what it would look like. And it's going to go right through there and right through there. Remember that the definition of a line means it goes on forever and ever. So you can go through those points, and then the arrows on the end show that it goes on and on forever. Okay? A segment is what stops here and doesn't go through the points. It's called a line segment. Okay, and now we know how to count for our slope. Let's see if you can see this. So slope equals, slope equals rise over run, remember? Rise over run. So I'm going to start at somebody's house. I don't care. Let's start here. And my rise, how much am I going to rise? I'm going to here. I'm starting here. 1, which direction?
Down.
Down. So it's a -1, right? So I've got a -1. I went from this house. I went down 1. Now I'm going to turn and run. And I'm running in a positive direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will all be. Look at the slope. Exactly the same slope. So you've got 2 ways that you can find the slope of a line that goes through these 2 points. Okay? I'm sure if they just give you the 2 points they prefer, that you use the formula. But on your GED test, they're not going to look to see how you found it. And so if you have trouble there or you forgot, then just plot it and count it. Sound good? Okay, it kind of helps to know you have something to fall back on if you need to. Good job, guys. Okay, now what I want to explain to you here, I'll get this squeaky chalk. Okay. On the next page in your, the very next page, it gives another formula that uses triangles. And triangles are kind of confusing the first time you look at it. But believe it or not, the triangle, in this case, simply is a shortcut for the change in, okay? It means the change between 2 things, okay? So, in your next page, it gives you another formula for slope, and it says the change, well, in y over the change in the x. This is just a mess. Okay. Okay, it says this. But you guys, I want you to pay attention here, because the change in y simply means where I subtract the y's. So the only reason that I gave you the second page is because I want you to be aware that this isn't anything new at all. It's it gives us what?
Another pattern?
Yes, another pattern. And you may see these triangles on your GED test. And so I have to make sure that you know that it isn't anything different. The change in y simply means subtract the y's. The change in x simply means to subtract the x's. So this formula is this formula. Are you guys okay with that?
So what if they add the triangles in front of it?
Shortcuts. Shortcuts. They probably use this later in higher mathematics, you know, and the change in volts or change, I don't know. Okay, maybe talking about electricity or talking about water flow. I have no idea, but I'm sure that the shortcut comes in handy for a higher mathematics, okay? But it just means the change in the y's, change in the x's. This is how you do the change, right there. Everybody okay with that? Okay, so I don't need to do an example there, do I? Because it's the exact same formula. You think you can handle it? Because what I'd like to do, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the third way to find the slope, and that's from an equation, okay? Any questions, Isabel?
No, ma'am.
Josh?
No, I got it.
Okay. Okay, find the slope, and I'm going to add something to this. You probably, the second part that I'm going to put up here isn't on your worksheets yet, but you're going to need to know it, and this is a really good time to find out, okay? And the y-intercept. This is what we're going to be doing the rest of class today. But I want to take a side trip, just a minute, and explain to you what intercepts are. Intercept. Gonna have to give this chalk away. An intercept. Can you guys read that? Do I need a different color? Intercept. Intercepts. This simply means, if we're talking about on a graph, an x-intercept is a point on the x-axis. An x-intercept. An x-intercept. Intercepts are always on an axis, either the x or the y-axis. Intercepts, always on the x or the y-axis. Y-intercept is the same thing if y'all want to write ahead of me. The y-intercept is a point on the y-axis. And the form of a point that is an intercept will always have a 0 in it. It will always have a 0 in the point. I'm going to show you an example, but it does depend on whether it's on the x-axis or the y-axis. So if there is an x-intercept, you're going to know by looking at it that it is an x-intercept because the y will always be 0. An x-intercept, that means we're going to have a number here somewhere. Some number, but the second or the y coordinate will always be 0 for the x-intercept. Now, however you remember that, this is fine. I remember it because it's opposite. If it's an x-intercept, then the y is 0. If it's a y-intercept, the x is 0. And there will be some number in the y place. Some people remember it that if it's an x-intercept, then there's going to be a number in the x. Okay? If it's a y-intercept, there's going to be a number in the y. But the other is going to be 0. Intercepts are on the axis, and intercepts always have 0 as one of the coordinates. Are we good? Okay, I need you to have this down because I'm going to erase this, and I want you to refer back to it when we talk today. So I'm going to give you just a second. Let me just snap a picture of this. Okay, Isabel, Josh, did you get this?
Yeah, I took a screenshot of
Yes,
it.
ma'am.
Josh, what'd you say?
I took a screenshot of it.
Oh, good. Okay. Okay, and Isabel, you said you're fine?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So now we're going to go back after I've told you what an intercept is, because right here we're going to be finding the y-intercept. All right. Here is the model that we're going to go by. Y equals mx plus b. Okay, now this is called slope intercept equation of a line. The slope intercept, okay? That's the name or the form that this is in, okay? And if they tell you to put something in the slope intercept form, what they're asking you to do is solve the equation for y. You solve the equation, you get y by itself, and everything else is on the other side. This is called the slope intercept form of a line. Okay, now if you are given the slope intercept form of a line, here's the reason why it's called that. When you get an equation solved for y, then the number that is in front of the x is the slope. The m, remember m stands for slope? Now when you say what the slope is, you're not going to include the x, only the coefficient. This is called a coefficient. It will be a number. And the number in front of the x is the slope. All you have to do is solve the equation where y is by itself. And the number here, including the sign, because sometimes it'll be minus for a negative, is the y-intercept. And as soon as you get familiar with this, oh my gosh, you will be able to do crazy stuff, okay? Y, solve for y, everything else is on this side, and when it's solved for y, then the slope is the coefficient that's in front of the x, and then the constant back here is the y-intercept, every single time. Because an equation that has a y and an x in it with no larger exponents than just an invisible 1, right? Okay, as long as the exponents aren't bigger than 1, and there's an x and a y in the equation, this will create a line. This is called a linear equation because it makes a line. okay? This is a linear equation. You can always tell by looking at an equation if it has x and y in it, and the exponents are not any bigger than 1, then it will make a line. Are we good? Okay. I am going to erase some of this so that I have room. So make sure that you have something you can refer to. Okay. Oh. Ornery thing.
I'm showing you things.
I'm actually going to put that up here so we know what to refer to. This is the form that we need. Y equals mx plus b, okay? We want it solved for y, all right? So if they give you an equation, here's an example. This says ex, that's how I say example. Let's say y equals 1/3 x minus 2. Now, from this equation, I want you to find the slope and I want you to find the y-intercept. Now, they're going to indicate the y-intercept as a b. Okay, y-intercept. When they're talking about slopes and y-intercept, you're going to see b, or it might say y-intercept. Okay? So when you look at the equation, the first thing you've got to do is say, is it solved for y? Yes, it's solved for y. Y is by itself. So all you have to do is look at it. Okay, what's the slope?
1/3.
1/3. What is the y-intercept?
2.
-2. Now, a lot of worksheets and a lot of different professors call the y-intercept just a -2. I think, well, you need to know that the more proper way to say y-intercept is going to be, it's actually a point. And a point on the graph needs those x and y coordinates, right? So the y-intercept is actually 0, -2, if you're going to plot that. Do you see? The y-intercept will always have 0 first. The y-intercept has 0 first. The reason I'm showing you this is on the GED test, it may just say the y-intercept is -2. But if you see it written like this, it's also correct. Okay? Pretty good chance they're just going to say -2, but I need you to know both. Are we good? All right. Okay. Let's do another example. How about y equals -x plus, I want you to find the slope and the y-intercept. Okay? So the first thing you do is look at the equation. Is it solved for y? Yes, it is. So what is the slope? -1. Good. Because it's not the x, we don't put an x here. It's the coefficient that's in front, and we know that there's always an invisible 1 if there's no number. Okay? So it's -1, and we know that if we have to graph it, if you're going to have a rise and run, then you just put it over 1. If it's a whole number, you're just going to put it over 1. Okay? Because later on we are going to graph it. And what is the y-intercept?
3.
Okay, 3 or 0, 3. Yes? I'm so tempted to move on to something else, but I'm not going to. All right, now the page that's in your packet aren't solved for y. And we've never solved for a variable when we have more than one variable in it. So let's do a few of those. Here we go.
And the first one?
Do you want me to do one off of there or just make up one? 2x minus 4y plus 7 equals 0. And this is number 1. Okay, if you'll notice when I draw that line down through the equal sign like we always do, that the y isn't by itself. So just like we've always done in solving equations, let's circle that so we can keep our eye on that. That means that all of this other stuff is not invited to the party, okay? We've got to get rid of this and this. Now we can do it in 2 steps if you want to, but you guys like shortcuts. You can do it in 1 step. If I know I need to get rid of this and I need to get rid of this, let's do it all in 1 step. If you are confused, go, whenever I do it, tell me to shut it down and do 1 step at a time, okay? But since I have this circled, I know that I'm going to leave this alone, get rid of this, and get rid of this, okay? So in this case, up until now, we just wanted the x by itself, and so we divided to get the 2 away from the x, right? But this time, I don't want them to get split apart and leave 1 piece here. I want the whole thing gone. So if I want the whole thing gone, I need to subtract it. This is a plus. I want the whole thing gone. So minus 2x. I also want this gone. So I can subtract 7. Do you guys see? But I have to follow the rules in the equation, in solving equations, and whatever I did on this side, I have to do on the other side. Okay, so on the other side, I'm going to have a minus 2x and a minus 7 over here. Do you see that I balanced the equation back out? Is everybody okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
All right, and we see that a negative and a positive additive inverses, and they cancel each other out. And the positive and negative 2x's, they're completely gone. So now all I have is a negative 4y equals negative 2x minus 7. So far, so good? Okay. And then I look at this equation. I have to have y by itself before I can find the slope and the y-intercept. I want the y by itself. Now this time, I want to split them apart or divide them apart. I just want the negative 4 to go away, but I want to leave this here. That's when we divide. We split them apart. And so this time, I'm going to divide by what I want to get rid of, which is a negative 4. But you have to do the same thing to the other side. Now, I'm going to show you, some teachers teach it this way. You divide this whole side by negative 4, divide that whole side by negative 4. I think it makes it easier for students if we put it under each piece, because that's how you're going to do it anyway. So I put a negative 4 under this piece and a negative 4 under this piece. And it seems to help when you're solving this thing. So if I divide it by negative 4 here, I have to divide everything over here by negative 4. Deal? All right. So when we finish, a negative and a negative, and the 4 divided by 4 is a 1. So we're left with 1y, and we go, ooh, we're about there. Yay. Okay, and here the negative, I'm looking at this fraction that's in front of the x, okay? You see it? The negative and the negative cancel each other out. And if I simplify this, divide the top and the bottom by 2, I'm going to come out with 1/2 x. Do y'all see? Okay, 1/2 x. And then I look at this piece, and it's also a fraction. The 2 negatives are going to cancel each other out, and I have plus 7/4. Okay? So now I want to know what the slope is and what the y-intercept is of this line. Now that we have it solved for y, you can't do it if it's not solved for y. You can't find these values. You have to solve for y first. So what's the slope now of this line? 1/2. And the y-intercept? 7/4. Y'all see?
4.
Now on this page, it says, find the slope. Up at the top of those instructions, I want you to find the slope and the y-intercept, because the next thing we're going to do, you'll need it anyway. So I want you to do extra on that page. If it says find the slope, I want you to find the slope and the y-intercept. Okay? Would you like to see one more? Okay, let's just pick one in here. Oh, and before you came in, this page 11, that's the next page. I want you to pull that out. Vanessa, are you hearing me? This is the last page in that packet, and I want you to pull it out. It's not even going to be in this packet. It's going to be at the end of packet 3. Okay. Okay, so all you're going to be doing is this today. Okay, you're going to be practicing. So let's see. Let's do another one. Isabel, Josh, are you still with me?
Yes.
Your voices
Yes,
are
ma'am.
a little bit quiet, so if you say something to me and I don't hear you, then holler at me. Okay?
Okay.
Or do something. Okay.
Okay.
Let's do, here we go. -1 equals 4x. I'm doing number 5. Plus 14y. This is number 5. So you can see that it is not solved for y. So don't try to tell me that the slope is 4. Don't tell me that, okay? You have to solve for y first. Everybody okay? Now, the reason that I did this one is because y is on the other side. But we found out when we were just solving for one variable, it didn't matter which side it was on as long as it was by itself, right? Yes? So this time it looks like we're just going to leave y over here. Okay? So if I'm solving for y, I need to get rid of this and this. Now, the best friend, you know, I told you this is best friend. You can't do that in the same step like we did last time. You can only do those pluses and minuses in the same step. So in this case, we're going to leave this alone for now and get rid of him. Now, what you have to say in your head is, do I want to divide? Do I want to split them apart and leave part of it here? Or do I want to subtract because I want the whole thing gone? We want the whole thing gone, so we're going to subtract 4 x's. And we're going to subtract 4 x's. The reason I scoot this over is so you don't do a -1 minus 4. Because these are x's, this is plain numbers, and you can't put them together. So now, these cancel out, and you have 14y left. It's okay to bring it over here. And over here, since you can't add these two negatives together, we have to write them separately. So I have a -4x minus 1 on this side. Are we okay so far? Then we circle the y. We know we want the y by itself, yes? So what am I going to do now? Divide by
4.
-4?
1.
14. Look at the circled y.
Oh.
Okay? I want to get rid of the 14. Circling what you're solving for will really help you. And remember, if I do the divide by 14 here, I have to do everything divided by 14. So divided by 14 and divided by 14. Okay, so far? All right, so now we have a y by itself, which is great. And now over here, we have a negative 4 over 14. If we simplify this fraction, it's going to be 2 over 7. Can y'all see that I divide the top and the bottom by 2? So it's a 2 over 7. It's going to be a negative. So I have a negative 2 over 7x minus, and another fraction, 1/14. Is the y by itself? Yes. So now we can find out what the slope is and what the y-intercept is. Slope,
0.
negative 2/7. Y-intercept?
114. Oh, negative.
Negative 0.
Negative 1/14. So we have a negative, ooh, lost my stuff. Uh-oh.
Oh,
A
negative
negative 1/14. And if we put that in a point form, it's an intercept. It's called the y-intercept. So it's 0, negative 1/14. Do you have a better idea now of solving equations? Linear, these are linear equations now. Linear, because this will make a straight line when you graph it. And we will be graphing. Either, I'll have to look, either tomorrow or Monday, we'll be graphing these lines. Okay? And this is where your function comes in. Okay? You guys were asking about functions. And then Irene talked to me about parabolas and quadratic functions. So in a couple of weeks, we're going to hit that. All right? She said
What was the first one?
linear.
No, the second word you said.
Parabola?
Yeah.
Oh, parabola and quadratic functions, you don't even need to write it yet. That'll be confusing.
You know how it's a graphic and they have the little loop.
Oh,
And you gotta pinpoint what the numbers were. That's what I'm trying to get.
Mhm.
yes.
And remember how I take you easy. I'll take you easy into quadratics too. Okay, this is as far as we're going today because I want you to practice solving these equations. Now you only have one page. So if some of you finish really quickly, I'll gladly print out another one so you can practice. Practice solving these equations for y. And when you solve for y, this is called the slope-intercept form. So later on, they'll say, write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form. And you'll know that you have to solve for y. It has to be solved for y. Any questions? We're good? You think you can do it? So you're finding
Everything.
you're finding the slope using 2 points, right? And then you're finding the slope and the y-intercept out of an equation. Are we good? Okay. My bunch in here said they're good. Are you guys ready to start?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Josh and Isabel,
Yes, ma'am.
before I got on the recording,
Yes.
the very last page of packet 2, the very last page, I want you to rip that off. And it is going to become the last page of packet 3. Okay? I don't
Okay.
want to hit that until the end of packet 3. Are we good?
Yeah.
So the last page of this packet
Okay.
becomes the last page of packet 3.
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. We're done for today. Any questions before you go?
No?
All righty. You have the worksheets.
No.
Okay. I'll see you tomorrow.
All right.
Love y'all.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.